Hi everyone, this is just an in-depth look at Road America in the Pro Mazda. The time of this lap's at 2027 in default afternoon, and there's the splits if anyone's interested. Now coming up to this final corner, don't overdo it. Make sure you just take it easy, as it's very easy to run wide here, and if you catch the outside grass you can lose a lot of momentum down the main straight and affect your next lap. So you don't really have to push the limit, but don't push too hard there. Now into turn one. This track is basically all about deliberate inputs and keeping the car flat on entry. A lot of tracks, once you start driving, you kind of sort of do it by intuition, but I find this track you really have to think about where you're braking in your entry line, because if you just start pushing a little bit over and taking a little bit more track, you tend to lose a lot as you run off and tap the grass, and also on qualifying laps you sort of want to drive within yourself when you're practicing, because you don't want the bad habits of over pushing in the qualifying laps to come, and it's very easy to lock the fronts here because they tend to be quite loaded and it shoots you off the track. So I'm just braking slightly before the one cone here, and you want to bring the car down one gear and up and over the right apex. You want to take as much curbing to the right as you can. Don't treat this corner as something you have to brake as late as you can. It's more about momentum. So down one gear, up and over that inside curb, and accelerate out. Now on acceleration out, if you're too deep under brakes, you tend to find it pushes you well out and off into the sand. I got that fine, so I didn't risk a one off there, but if you're a little bit too more aggressive under brakes, you can. Now the same here, you're braking just before the one marker, and you're bringing the car down either 2 or 3 gears. Now if you want to go down 3 gears, you want to kind of do 2 quickly and then 1 at the apex. Because if you go down 3 quickly, I find it unsettles the car too much at entry and you lose a lot of speed and acceleration out. So I don't remember if this lap I done down 2 or down 3, but you want to either down 2 straight away or down 3 late. And make sure you bring again tight inside apex. Don't brake too late or else you're off in the sand pits, and get a good exit. Into that inside apex and accelerate out. That was down in 4th. Now you do lose a little bit of acceleration out in 4th, but I tend to find keeping the car flat and settled is a little bit more important than that acceleration. Now as we're coming up to here, you're braking after the, I believe it's 1 marker on the right. You want to move the car over to the right and braking after the 1 marker, and then you want to bring it in down in the 3rd gear, and you want to bring it in slowly into the apex and accelerate out and use the off track to the right to the point that it gives you an actual iRacing off track. So use the runoff area, but don't push it out too wide. Once you tend to brake a bit early here when you're practicing, but you can actually take it quite deep to the point of going after the 1 marker, but you need to make sure you bring it into the apex, like this. Down 3, into the apex, then push the car out. That's a good example through there. It never looks particularly impressive when you get that corner right, but it's just the smooth carrying of the speed. Now under the Corvette bridge, again, you're focusing on keeping the car flat as it wants you to lock the fronts up on entry here, and it's really important you don't run wide. So a little bit of conservative driving into here can help you a lot. So just down to 3rd, bring it into the inside apex. You can get up on it a little bit, but I don't recommend getting up on it too much. That there was actually probably a little bit more than optimal. I tend to want to bring the front wheel just slightly past the white line, but I got a little bit too much on the curb there and it kind of bounced the car a bit, which pushed it out. It didn't really cost me a whole lot, but I would take maybe a little more shallow line in optimal. Now just flat through here, bring the car into the apex and just hold it flat. You don't have to worry about anything on any downforce levels here. Now this is a tricky corner. Now you immediately have to take your attention from the braking zone to the apex. You don't want to miss the apex. You kind of want to treat actually the braking zone not as a braking zone, but kind of like an entry to the next corner's apex, and focus on carrying speed as opposed to getting the car slowed excessively. I notice a lot of people when they're not familiar with the track treat this as a hard braking zone, but that's not really the way to do it. So you're coming in, you're braking down, you're getting down to 3 gears, throwing the car into the inside apex and pushing it out. If you push it out too wide, again, catch the sand. So it's more just like a momentum braking, not kind of overly slowing the car and then throwing it into the apex and carrying that out wide. Now that momentum continues to carry off this outside corner and through this next 180 degree long right-hander. Now coming in here, you're entering from far wide. You want to upshift to fifth in the middle of it, but you're also wanting to modulate the throttle around the mid corners. You want to keep it fairly tight on the inside line through exit. So you're entering from well out wide into fifth, but then kind of modulating the throttle a little bit to keep the car on line. A fair bit actually. I'm nearly going completely off the throttle, as you want it to kind of take a nice inside line and you can't really get close to the inside apex, but carry momentum and keep it fairly tight. You don't want to feel like you're overturning the car, just smooth sweeping motion through here. It's modulating the throttle a little bit to keep it on that line, and then getting hard on exit to carry maximum momentum out. Now just flat down through here. Now into this braking zone, you're braking just slightly after the 2 marker, and you want to quickly downshift 3 gears. You need it in third for good exit, and trail brake into the apex. So when you get to the 2 marker, brake slightly after it and kind of trail it in to keep the weight of the car forward, and that will help it make that apex, and then quickly harden the throttle to push it out to the outside of the track and accelerate out. So trail braking a little bit. See, I'm not releasing the brake until I've got a decent amount. I've got the car at this point turning and the brake's still slightly on. It's just helping to keep the weight shift forward. And hard acceleration out. But again, there's an off-track lurking for you out there, so you don't want to overdo it. To the inside apex, pushed out. That's pretty well close to perfect through there. Now just flat up through here, you don't have to lift to keep it tight to the inside apex. And now one of the hardest corners of the track, which of course is always last, when you put that perfect lap in to keep it unstuck. The car wants to lock the brakes again into here, so you've got to, I tend to take a little bit of caution through here, because if you want a great lap, I don't think it's worth trying to find half a tenth more through this corner and risking putting it on the outside of the corner and catching the sand. So I'm just braking, no real braking marker. I guess you could use the 2, I don't. I'm just looking more at braking before the end of the darker patch of the road and getting down to 4th gear and making sure you get into a very tight early apex so you can get in the throttle and push out. And using all that off track. If you go too deep on the initial entry through there, it's very easy to run the car out completely wide. But I don't tend to push it too aggressively here. You probably could brake a little bit later, but I don't know. I just don't want to catch that mid-corner understeer, miss this inside apex and ruin the whole lap. And that runs through there. And that's a lap. If I put together my best sectors on this track, I think there is maybe a couple more tenths. But, you know, that's the case with every track, and it is a really long track around here, so putting your optimal lap together can be quite challenging and time consuming.